Hi, ladies. This is Shirley with Club Afia. I'm sure you recall that Club Afia is the club for women where there are no borders. And there are no borders in Club Afia because we are online. Much of our work is done online because it allows us to reach women everywhere. And because we also intentionally reach out to women everywhere in the world. Club Afia is a members club for women and a very special kind of resource center where women can find opportunity and access to develop relationships and communications and friendships with women all over the world to support one another in doing the work that we are here to do, to find the answers that we want to find, and to remain connected, particularly in this post pandemic, in what will be the post pandemic world. During the pandemic and afterwards, when um, we expect, and many of us actually hope, the world will be a different place afterwards, as in different, as in a better place, a safer place for women and for everyone. And I say this because I have been receiving letters and emails from women in different parts of the world, and that's one of the questions they all ask. What is the world going to be like once this is over? And when and how? Of course, when and how we don't know, or what it will be like we don't know either. What we do know, what I can say, is that what the world is like afterwards depends a lot on what we all do. Even here in, like some of you might know, I am currently in the Caribbean. I was born in the Caribbean, grew up in the Caribbean, then have lived overseas, including the United States, for most of my life. And I've been here. I was in the Caribbean when the the COVID crisis picked up, for want of a better term, when it became a real crisis, and chose to stay here because it was safer. Quite frankly, it was safer being in a small Caribbean island with very few people and wide open windows and air blowing through and the sea and all that. It was safer from a health perspective, and many others actually, for me to stay here. And so I stayed here. Because being in the city with millions of people, although I love cities and I really enjoy living in cities, but being in a city where there are millions of people means that my risk of catching the illness increased, countless fold compared to being here on a small island. But I've been in constant contact with people around the world. And one of the concerns that people have is, what is the world going to be like afterwards? How are we going to be? Is this going to make a difference to how we treat each other? How we treat our world, how we treat the animals, the trees, how we treat the planet itself? Because in recent years, in recent decades, we have all become aware of the damage we have done to the world. I mean, there are people who say the world just wanted to be able to breathe. Because think about it. In the height of the crisis, well, we're still in the height of the crisis, depending on where you live in the world. But it became clear that when cities were closed down, when people are under lockdown, the animals roam. The seas were quiet, and they were seeing dolphins and sharks and sea life, sea creatures in places where they would have been, they had historically been, but no longer were because of maritime traffic. Yes, there are photographs of animals on city streets all over the world. India, Europe, the United States. Birds in places where they had not been seen in decades. Because once human beings were no longer in those spaces, no longer being a disturbance, no longer being a hindrance, no longer blocking them, and once they were again safe in those areas, they came out. And it was a joy to many people, so much so that it has ignited the whole rewilding philosophy, the whole rewilding activism around the world about reclaiming spaces for nature. We have built and cemented over so much of the world in our huge mega cities that we have in many ways separated ourselves from nature, from the world. And what has been showing up, people are saying, is that well, there are the spiritual and philosophical people who said the universe just wanted to breathe. The universe has got a chance to breathe. And unfortunately, she had to put man under pressure, had to put human beings under pressure in order to get space. The other aspect of that is that this being in lockdown, as much as we resisted and didn't like it, but we did it anyway because it was one way of keeping safe. When we were in lockdown, when we are in lockdown, it gives us a chance to reflect. It gives us a chance to think, to see things differently. And when you consider how the major activities of the world were brought to a halt, and we were having as human beings to reconsider and pay real attention to our mortality. You get sick today and you're dead. Now, of course, that's a normal course of life, but it's a different thing when, I will die one of these days, as opposed to, goodness gracious, I can go to the supermarket, catch COVID and be dead within a week or two. Yes? For those of our sisters and brothers who have been living in war-torn countries, those of our sisters and brothers who have been refugees, who have been forced out of their homes and so on, those of us who haven't, who had not been, I hope have begun to understand what they had been feeling, what it means, what it feels like, get some inkling what it feels like to be living in a state of war, in a state of deprivation, in a state of exile, in refugee status, having no home really, and nowhere to go to or come from for that matter, or go back to. So these emails that I've got are asking, everybody's asking the same questions. Are we still going to be the same after we get through this? Are we going to continue the wars and the selfishness and the extreme capitalism, where the more I get, the zero-sum game, where I grab all of it for me and then that leaves nothing for you and it doesn't matter? Are we going to continue to be like that? Are we going to continue to be so disconnected from our neighbors next door? I remember when Italy was really, really at the top of the list, or the bottom of the list, depending on how you look at it, the number of people dying and the number of people getting ill, in particular the older people. And there were concerns about how they were being taken care of. And I remember listening to a podcast where they were talking about people living in these apartment buildings. And now the young people who, by constitution, I suppose, have greater immunity to illness anyway, live in the same buildings and would be the ones to be depended on to support and help out the older folks living in their apartment buildings. But it would have been a risk for them to go visit these older folks, because then you risk taking them the coronavirus. And then, in these apartment buildings, people are not necessarily all friends. So if this young person, what would he or she do? Just go and knock on the door and say, may I help you? Can I help you with something? And so the questions of what relationships we live in with our neighbors is a big deal. And one of the questions is, are we going to continue to be like that? Are we going to continue to be like that? And this happens so much in large cities, particularly. There are so many people, obviously, you have to, security issues and safety and so on are a different concern when you're in a large city than when you're in a rural area. But human beings have the same needs, the same needs for relationship and connection and community and mutual support, reciprocal support, whether we live in large cities or we live in small rural areas. So after this, what? How are we going to be? And are we going to be intentional about this? We created Club Afia because that was a part of our concern. It would make perfect sense for us to be intentional about how we are after this, to build a better world. We say it all the time. All of us, in our private conversations, in our public conversations, in our art, in our politics, in everything, we talk about a better world. We talk about being able to contribute to make the world a better place. We talk about what it needs to do, what we as individuals and as groups need to do to make the world safer, better, to improve lives. for ourselves and our communities, our families, our friends, our, So are we going to do that? Are we going to do that? At Club Afia, we believe that this is a perfect time for women's leadership, and that we women get to be clear and intentional and purposeful about changing the world, making the world better to the extent that we are able. Being in contribution to the world is a specific kind of leadership that we are talking about here. And so today, that's what I want to leave with you. The entire Afia philosophy and approach and goal and vision is about making the world a better place. In small or as large as we possibly can. We do whatever little we can. And if everybody does a little bit, just like wearing the masks, if everybody wears the masks, then we're pretty much good. But if I do and then you don't, or you do and somebody else doesn't, then we have a problem. We don't really get anywhere. So the kind of leadership we're looking for is for the world, that if we are serious about improving the world, is the kind of leadership, it's self-leadership. It's self-leadership where we say we will do what is necessary. We will do what is good. We will wear our mask. We will reach out to our neighbors. We will support where we can. And that feeds right into all the other changes that are showing themselves, that are being evidenced and that are percolating around the world, that are bubbling and exploding and igniting around the world. Civil rights is a perfect example. Are we going to continue to be racist and sexist and all those other things? Or are we going to, because this has been a global pandemic, it has touched, is touching, and or is going to be touching every single community in this world at some level. Even here in Montserrat, we lost people. Fortunately, just one person. When we had people ill, we lost one person to COVID, to this disease, this virus. So everywhere it's going to affect people. The world is such a small place. All of us pretty much have family and friends living in countries different to where we live. And so even if it's not affecting us immediately in our personal space, in our home space where we live, chances are it's affecting somebody we know somewhere else, because it is in so many different places. So the kind of leadership that this requires begins with self-leadership, begins with each person, and we're talking specifically to women. We're talking to men, obviously. We're hoping the men do the same. But if you think about it and check the news, and you'll see that of the countries which handled the coronavirus pandemic, crisis with greatest success right up front and with both firmness and compassion, were the countries run by women. New Zealand, Taiwan, Germany, Finland, I think, was one. They handle it differently to, for example, the United Kingdom and the United States. And it's not because there are women running it, but the fact that there are women and that they have been this successful supports our argument that women, there is room, there is space, there is need for women at the highest, at every level of leadership in our communities, at every kind of leadership, in every sector of our communities. And our work at Club Afia is built around that. It's built around that. The kind of leadership that recognizes our individual place and our individual potential, what we could possibly give to the world, how we could possibly contribute to the improvement of our world, how we could individually add value. And whether we do that in small ways, small individual ways, or we do that in large ways where we gather people and pull people together and bring people together and work in groups. In any case, the world needs that kind of leadership. And that's what Club Afia is about. That is what Club Afia is about. And that is why we are asking you to join us, come grow with us, and let us individually do whatever it is that we can to bring value to our world, to help make our world a safer, better place. to improve our homes, our families, our communities, our small communities, our towns, our villages, our apartment blocks. Yes? So, that's my leadership speech for today. Think about this. If the world is going to be different, if we will have learned a lesson from what has happened, and I don't need to tell you, you've seen it from one day to the next. Wow, we're locked down, planes have stopped flying, boats have stopped moving, cars, you can't leave your house. You can't go to the hospital to say goodbye or say hello to a sick relative. You can't even bury your dead. You can't even do the rituals. We can't even do the rituals that we are used and that we need as human beings. It has changed everything. Now the question is, do we continue to be the same? Or do we figure out how to be better after this and how to build a better world, an improved world? Think about this. Drop us a line. Come join us. Come grow with us. Club Afia. www.clubafia.com. It's $30 a year for membership, and that allows us to continue the work, to expand the work. That is $2.50 a month. That's $2.50 a month. And in our clubhouse, we are hosting seminars and workshops and discussions and girls' nights, fun things, of course, also. And we are loading up our website with information and reports and opportunities for women, for us, to build the communities that we want, to be the persons that we want to be, to build the world, to rebuild, to refashion, to reorganize the world, so that after this is done, we and our world are in a better place. I look forward so much to seeing you, to working with you, to meeting you online and eventually in person. I thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart. I thank you for having walked this piece of the journey with me. I look forward to seeing you for the rest of this journey. And I wish you well on your journeys. Take good care.